Man crates. Awesome gifts for men in real wooden crates, wrapped in a cocoon of duct tape, or housed in ammo cans that are virtually indestructible. Some gifts he'll get to assemble himself. Some gifts you'll beg him to share. And some gifts are sealed inside layers of rock-solid concrete. Gifts guys love, from grilling gear to old-school video games and more. Man crates. Awesome gifts for men.
Hello and good morning. Welcome into the Cam Rogers Show on this Monday, December 11th, 2017. I am Cam Rogers. We thank you for tuning in to this program here as we take you up until 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. We thank you for being a part of this show. I hope you had a great weekend. It was a wild one across the NFL yesterday. Week 14 essentially transpired. We still have one more game tonight. We got the Dolphins and Patriots doing battle at Hard Rock Stadium, but a lot went down yesterday. I've got highlights for all you folks out there. If you're just waking up with me, maybe on the West Coast, or maybe you're chilling at work, you don't want to get started on those emails on this Monday morning, you're watching the show, don't worry. I got the top 3 highlights for you coming at you. Eagles and Rams, got a little Vikings and Panthers action, as well as Seattle taking on Jacksonville. Who would have thought that would be a marquee matchup in the late window yesterday? Well, it was. And by the way, we want you getting me wherever you go, too. So download the Cam Rogers podcast version. Just search The Cam Rogers Show, and there you go. Get me wherever you go. Download, subscribe, leave a review if you so choose. And throughout the program here, within the next hour, throw in those comments. We really appreciate you chiming into the show. We love bringing up your comments throughout the broadcast. It's what makes this show unique, right? Because you can be a part of the rundown, if you will, and we'll be showing those reactions to many of the topics that I discuss here today throughout the broadcast. Okay, so here's what's coming up at you. It's an NFL-rich show here. I'll get to the highlights in a matter of seconds, and then at the 15-minute mark, we've got an NFL playoff picture update. A lot of movement going on in the NFC and AFC, respectively, so I got you covered in that regard. Then I have an updated NFL coaching hot seat ranking list. Well, somebody just moved into number 1. John Fox was there previously. We have inserted a new name. Stay tuned to see who it is. And then I have an NFL mock draft top 10 for you, talking about NFL draft time for a lot of fans out there because a lot of their teams are essentially out of the playoff hunt. So don't you worry. I've got some top 10 picks to look at the 45-minute mark. And then to wrap up, time permitting, a final word on what happened yesterday in that Texans versus 49ers matchup where Tom Savage looked like he got a concussion, went out, got evaluated, went back into that game, then left again because the evaluation failed him that first time. I'll rant about that later in the show if time permitting. But let's get into the highlights as promised, ladies and gentlemen. We'll start off with Eagles and Rams in sunny LA. Carson Wentz versus Jared Goff. We'll start off with Carson Wentz actually getting picked off here on a 3rd and 5. So really nice start here for the Rams in a nothing game. Then Todd Gurley doing Todd Gurley things, facing the number 1 rush defense in this game. He's into the end zone for his first touchdown. But the Eagles would respond, though. Selleck, touchdown. The tight ends were a big part of the offense for the Eagles. Then 3rd and 11, Wentz to Trey Burton, another tight end in double coverage. 14-7 Eagles at that point. Then how about a little more Trey Burton on a 3rd down? Sucks that one in. Nice basketball kind of box-out type catch there. 21-7 Eagles. But the Rams would respond here. Cooper Kupp, nice extension there over the goal line for the touchdown. And the Rams are within shouting distance. Now it's a 3-point game. Eagles lead by 3, but not anymore. That punt is blocked by Michael Thomas, taken into the end zone by the Rams. And now it's 28-24 at this point. Wentz to Alshon Jeffrey. Wentz actually had an injured knee during that throw. He just stood in there like a statue, and an amazing grab there by Alshon Jeffrey, essentially plucking it out of the ground. Great job there by the wide receiver. Okay, Gurley, again, 2nd and goal. End zone he goes. Rams take the lead. Now, Eagles up by 2. Nick Foles now in the game will fire for a 1st down conversion to Nelson Agholor. The Eagles go on to win this game They got a touchdown at the end of it after all this lateral stuff by the LA Rams. The Eagles, in a bittersweet victory, improved to 11-2 on the year. The Rams fall to 9-4, but despite that loss, they are actually the number 3 seed as we stand because they own that tiebreaker over the New Orleans Saints. Now, I say bittersweet because, of course, there are reports out there that Carson Wentz may have torn his ACL and could be done for the entire season. This has not been officially announced by the Philadelphia Eagles. These are merely media reports. Yesterday, ESPN said that it was a torn ACL. Later that evening, Ian Rappaport of NFL Network said it may not be completely torn. It could be something else. We have a tweet from Ian Rappaport that we'll show you that gives you a little more context into what we're talking about here. But obviously, a very significant injury for the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's the tweet from Ian Rappaport just last night. The Eagles believe QB Carson Wentz injured his ACL today versus Rams, but initial tests don't definitively show a complete tear. Sources tell Rappaport. MRI tomorrow or today will tell the story. They're not giving up hope. So it's not all over yet. And I suspect we could be getting some breaking news on the Cam Rogers Show here today. With more information about Carson Wentz, we'll, of course, keep you updated throughout the program here. But we do have a weigh-in for the folks at home. So let's just, for the sake of argument here, assume that Carson Wentz is going to be done for the rest of the year. It looked like a pretty darn brutal injury. And by the way, Carson Wentz hung in there for a few games after he injured that knee. For a few plays after he injured that knee. Ended up throwing a touchdown pass. I've been in situations as a former quarterback where I've injured myself and I have to essentially stand in the pocket and try to make plays happen. It's not fun because you can't run. Same situation there with Carson Wentz. Could not move, could not run at all. Playing on a torn ACL, we presume, we don't know for sure, just goes to show how gritty, how tough this guy really is. So, Eagles fans and NFL fans across the world, can the Eagles make the Super Bowl without Carson Wentz? That is the big-time question now. Nick Foles is the next guy up at the quarterback position. And Eagles fans know Nick Foles well. Andy Reid drafted him in 2012, played for the Eagles, replaced Michael Vick in 2013, you may recall. Actually took the Eagles to the playoffs that year with a 10-6 record under Chip Kelly's first season. Took on the New Orleans Saints, and actually lost that game at home. But Nick Foles is a capable quarterback. So can Foles' ceiling be Super Bowl type of a ceiling here? And of course, it's not going to be because of Nick Foles if the Eagles do make the Super Bowl. Let's just face facts here. That defense is great. The front line is legit. The corners are playing way beyond the expectations I had, especially Robinson this year. And so the big question is, can Nick Foles be that guy to at least manage the games going forward? Can they establish a good ground attack with the likes of Jay Ajayi and LeGarrette Blount and Clement too? But let's face it, there have been a lot of injuries this season across the NFL, a lot of debilitating injuries for just general NFL fans. Seeing stars like Deshaun Watson go down, like J.J. Watt go down. Tough to see. Tough for ratings too, by the way, with the way in which the NFL is doing right now in that regard. The Eagles already lost 9-time Pro Bowl left tackle Jason Peters, return specialist and running back Darren Sproles, star linebacker in Jordan Hicks. They've battled through all of that adversity so far to get to this point, to be 11-2. By the way, NFC East champions this season as well. So they can kind of carry that momentum into the following games this season. So very important in that regard. The Dallas Cowboys, meanwhile, you can count them out of the NFC race. They can only hope for the wild card. Now we have a player card for Nick Foles. For Eagles fans out there, perhaps that are just waking up in Eagle land and you don't recall the times of Nick Foles, here's a little more information about him. Like I said, he was drafted by Andy Reid in 2012, replaced Michael Vick in 2013, and took the Eagles to the playoffs after winning the NFC East. Here's the deal with Nick Foles. He was never a good fit for Chip Kelly, by the way. That's just number one. He's not going to have the mobility that Carson Wentz would have. The read options and all that kind of situation, the run options, however you want to say it, won't fit Nick Foles' game. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to have to go to a more ground and pound, a traditional NFL offense. They're going to have to change some plays in the play sheet. Doug Peterson's going to have to take the reins on that one, and they're going to have to suit to what Nick Foles can do. Now, they have tape to go back and look at, okay, what could Nick Foles do for us back in the day? Back a couple of years ago, Nick Foles, of course, had a couple of stints with the Rams and the Chiefs after his stint with the Philadelphia Eagles. And so he returns to Philadelphia. Look, this is not a situation where we're going from Joe Flacco to Ryan Mallett. We're going from Tyrod Taylor to Nathan Peterman. It's not that kind of jump. Nick Foles is a quality backup. He might be one of the top 3 backups in the NFL. And so in that vein, I think Nick Foles can actually make some noise with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, noise is all relative, right? We're not talking about Carson Wentz MVP type of noise. By the way, Carson Wentz with a franchise-leading touchdown amount this season in terms of passing. So great job for Carson Wentz. And it's just, my heart aches for the guy. It really does. And, just kind of putting analysis aside, putting X's and O's aside, hearing news like this from a star quarterback who has made just a tremendous leap from last year to this year, as a football fan, my heart aches for Eagles fans. It aches for Carson Wentz. It aches for his teammates, the front office, etc. It's just a tough, tough situation. Again, we are not here at Chat Sports reporting that he is done for the year. That's just what the media is saying, i.e. ESPN and NFL Network, where, it's possible that he could be done for the year. Okay, so there has been no confirmation from the MRI yet. We'll be monitoring the wires in regards to that. But the Philadelphia Eagles, right now, looking like they're going to roll with Nick Foles unless we hear otherwise. Okay, so the Eagles win a big game in that one against the LA Rams. Keep those comments flowing about the Eagles and the Rams. Let's get to another exciting one. Seattle taking on Jacksonville. In Jacksonville, the Jaguars got a late window game, guys. Can you believe this? All right, we'll go to the first. Jaguars trying to get something going. Running back Chris Ivory answers the call, shakes and bakes his way for 34 yards and sets Jacksonville up for a field goal. Second quarter we go. It's Russell Wilson. Wilson, hey, good pass protection there on a deep drop, fires downfield for Doug Baldwin. But Jalen Ramsey is right there in perfect position to intercept that pass just a little deep there. All right, field goal attempt here. Blair Walsh, 38-yard try is no good. He is having an awful year. Third quarter, Blake Bortles, floater. D.D. Westbrook into the end zone, 18-yarder, puts the Jags up 10-0 at that point. Later in the quarter, Wilson answering the Jags, this time with a 26-yard strike to Doug Baldwin to even things up at 10. And then, how about this play? Blake Bortles, good pocket, fires downfield, absolute bomb for Keelan Cole, 75 yards, all the way into the end zone. 17-10 at that point, now a first and goal situation, and Leonard Fournette, the rumbler, into the end zone. Jags go up 14. Next drive for Seattle ends with Russell Wilson's third interception of the game, this one to A.J. Bouye for the second time. I'm telling you, these Jags corners are absolutely unbelievable. By the way, unbelievable catch there by A.J. Now, Seattle made it interesting at the end, but the Jaguars went on to win that one 30-24. Jacksonville is now the number 3 seed in the AFC, guys. What? Meanwhile, Seattle falls outside the playoff picture for the time being. We currently have 2 NFC South teams inside the playoff picture. Saints as the division winners, and then the Panthers and the Falcons as the 5th and 6th seeds, respectively. All right, so Blake Bortles, pretty darn good day for him. 18-27, 268, couple of touchdowns. That Seattle secondary, guys, I'm telling you, it's a problem. No Cam Chancellor, no Richard Sherman, a washed-up Byron Maxwell. And when Blake Bortles is airing it out, those are concerns. Meanwhile, for Jacksonville, the question for them, are they a Super Bowl contender? Throw in the comments, ladies and gentlemen. This is a legit question now. It is time to start asking this. Can Jacksonville go the distance? Can they go to Minneapolis and win a Super Bowl? That is the big question mark. They probably had a franchise-altering victory yesterday against the Seattle Seahawks. The crowd noise was great. Even in a stadium where they seem to not be able to fill it up, crowd noise is really still good. And you have a defense that may be the best in the NFL. They're certainly the best in the NFL in terms of yards, in terms of passing yards, in terms of sacks, and they're intercepting balls left and right. A.J. Bouye and Jalen Ramsey, these guys are fantastic on the outside. Yannick Ngakoue, the Terp, on the inside, on that front seven, has been fantastic. Telvin Smith, Paul Posluszny, what can you say about them? Very intelligent players in that front seven as well. So throw in those comments. Do you believe in Jacksonville? For me, it all comes down to, and for many people, Blake Bortles. Can he make the throw? And by the throw, I mean, can he make that play in January, heck, in February, that sets you over the top, that gives you that signature victory? He had a couple of those throws yesterday to Keelan Cole. That certainly stood out to me. I'm going to say, not yet. Not yet. Not too sure about Jacksonville being a Super Bowl contender as we flow through the highlights one more time if you're just tuning in. Look, impressive runs. There's one by Chris Ivory. Impressive throws. Impressive interceptions. You see, even when Russell Wilson had time in the pocket, I mean, Jalen Ramsey's right there with Doug Baldwin, one of the elite wide receivers in the NFL. Blair Walsh continuing to struggle, etc. So for Jacksonville, I think they have the pieces in place to make a run in the playoffs. I'm not ready to buy in terms of a Super Bowl just yet. Just yet. Meanwhile, for Seattle, concerns, guys. Concerns. Now, they have a big-time matchup against the Rams this week. If they win that game, they would be back inside the playoff picture. And for all intents and purposes, I did have Seattle losing this game. I didn't think Jacksonville was a good matchup for them going across the country and battling this team that could just manhandle Seattle's offensive line that's playing better than weeks past. That'll happen when you trade for Dwayne Brown, but obviously not as good as Jacksonville's front seven. Okay, we got one more highlight for you. Vikings-Panthers. This was in the early window, a big-time game here. And we'll start with the first drive for the Minnesota Vikings. Not going as planned. Case Keenum is going to throw downfield here for Adam Thielen, and Darryl Worley is right there to come up for it for Carolina. Interception to start off the game. Ensuing drive for the Panthers. Jonathan Stewart, hey guys, when you do a bear defense or when you do a goal line defense and you break that first line of defense, you're gone. Jonathan Stewart, gone. 60 yards. Panthers up 7-0 at that point. Then Keenum bouncing back on his next drive. Going to find Kyle Rudolph down the field for an 18-yard touchdown. 7-all in the first quarter. Start of the second, it's Jonathan Stewart again rumbling his way in, carrying the Viking defense into the end zone for the touchdown. All right, 14-13, third quarter. Look at Cam Newton doing Cam Newton things, backing out of trouble, off his back foot, fires downfield for Devin Funchess for the 18-yard score. Panthers ahead by 8, but the Vikings would not quit. Adam Thielen, there he is. He arrived late. It was the late fourth quarter, and there he goes into the end zone, 52 yards. Vikes get the 2-point conversion, and this is a 3-point game. But Cam Newton doing his typical Superman all the way into Vikings territory. That was from his 30-yard line. Cam, nice little stare down at the end there, by the way. And then Jonathan Stewart to cap it off. Nice touchdown there on a 3rd and goal. The Panthers go on to win this one 31-24. Newton 13-25. Still pedestrian passing numbers, but it didn't matter. Jonathan Stewart was fantastic. Devin Funchess serviceable as well. And Case Keenum throwing the football 44 times. I know we put him in our MVP power rankings list last week, but still, throwing the football 44 times, Case Keenum, that just doesn't make much sense to me. Very impressive victory for the Carolina Panthers. They are inside the playoff picture in the NFC. The Vikings fall to 10-3, and the Eagles winning, the Vikings can't, of course, be the number 1 seed right now in the NFC. They still have a chance, though. So we do have a weigh-in with Wentz's injury. And again, we are still awaiting the official announcement from the Philadelphia Eagles, but with the injury that looks pretty darn bad in regards to Carson Wentz, are the Vikings the favorite now in the NFC? So we'll show the playoff picture in a matter of seconds, but we do want you to throw those comments in, ladies and gentlemen, because maybe the Vikings now see an opportunity where they can surpass the Philadelphia Eagles and be that #1 team in the NFC because of the injuries that are happening right now to the Eagles. Jason Peters, Carson Wentz, etc. All right, so with the Vikings losing this game, I don't think it's a gut punch to their chances for the #1 seed in the NFC. I think it's an opportunity to kind of learn from this loss. I actually had Carolina Panthers winning that game. You know, it's just a tough situation. You're going into Carolina. The Panthers are a very tough physical team, and as we bring up the NFC playoff picture, it was just a tough draw for the Vikings this week. So here's where we stand. So we've got the Eagles at 11-2. And before the Carson Wentz injury, I actually had the Eagles winning out and getting the #1 overall seed. I might have to change my projections a little bit now with Nick Foles now at the helm, but we'll see. I need some time to analyze a little further. But here's how we stand right now. Okay, we got Eagles at 1, Vikings at 2. Like I said earlier, Rams are still at 3 despite losing because they have that tiebreaker over the New Orleans Saints. Then you've got Carolina at #5, a scary good team at 9-4 on the campaign, have looked kind of ugly at times this year, but that's just kind of Carolina football. Okay, now we have Atlanta at 8-5, holding that final spot. Now, why are they ahead of Seattle? Well, they own that head-to-head tiebreaker. Remember that Monday Night Football game? Atlanta went on the road and beat Seattle. Okay, so Seattle's on the outside looking in. Now, we got a cluster of the Lions, Packers, and Cowboys. Detroit is ahead of Green Bay based on head-to-head right now. They still have to play one more time. Detroit won that first matchup. Detroit is ahead of Dallas based on common games record. 3-1 for Detroit, 3-2 for the Cowboys. Green Bay is ahead of Dallas based on head-to-head. Green Bay beat Dallas. And those are really the tiebreakers that matter. I mean, Tampa Bay ahead of Chicago based on head-to-head, but I don't even have Tampa Bay in the playoff picture here, the NFC. So what can happen from here? Well, I think for Philadelphia, like I said, they're going to have to cater to Nick Foles. They won the NFC East, though, so that is something they can kind of breathe about, right? They're going to get a home game, whether it's 1 or 2 or whatever, we don't know yet. They have the Giants coming up, and you saw how they looked against the Dallas Cowboys. I think the Philadelphia Eagles should win that game. Then a Christmas night matchup against the Oakland Raiders. I think the Raiders are going to have their U-Hauls packed in at that point. Eagles win there. So the Eagles are at 13-2. Then they play Dallas. And it all depends on where the Eagles stand in terms of what they have clinched. If they have home field throughout the NFC, then I see a situation where the Eagles probably will sit their starters, rest their players, especially when you see the injuries and stuff like that going on. And then Dallas perhaps can win that game, maybe sneak into the playoffs. But there's how you see my projections from last week transferred over to this week. I have the Eagles finishing 14-2. I still think they have a good chance at winning out. Again, I can't predict whether or not they're going to sit their starters or anything like that, so I'm assuming they're winning out. I got the Vikings as the 2 seed. I do have Seattle in as the NFC West champions here. I do think they beat the Rams this week. I know they weren't all that impressive a week ago. I do have the Saints inside the playoff picture as well. The Rams hang in there as the number 5 seed, and the Falcons get in at 10-6. And what I did, ladies and gentlemen, I used a calculator online to project every single game the rest of the way, okay? And used kind of the results of that computer to throw out my graphic here in terms of how I see things finishing in the NFC and AFC respectively. Cowboys 8-8, Lions 9-7, Panthers 10-6. That's how I see things shaking out this season for the NFC. All right, let's go to the AFC now. And here's where we're at. So Pittsburgh beat Baltimore last night on Sunday Night Football. That was expected by me. I had Pittsburgh winning that game, although, look, the Ravens almost stole that one away. So Pittsburgh is the number 1 seed right now. Even if the Patriots win tonight, Pittsburgh would still be the number 1 overall seed. So it's going to be probably the 11-2 Steelers versus the 11-2 New England Patriots this Sunday, Week 15, late window. Gotta love it. National television. Looking forward to that matchup. Roethlisberger and Brady back at it again. There's Jacksonville at number 3. If the season were to end today, Jacksonville would be playing Buffalo, and that would probably be a 30-10 blowout in favor of Jacksonville. I can't believe Buffalo's actually inside the playoff picture right now. Then you have the Chiefs. So they won yesterday. Big performance there for Kansas City against the Oakland Raiders. And Kansas City currently ahead of the LA Chargers in the AFC West based on head-to-head record. So the Chiefs already beat the Chargers. They're going to play again later this year. All right, so there's the Titans as well. Now, if the Titans win out, they can still win the AFC South because the Titans battle the Jaguars later this year on New Year's Eve, right? In Week 17, if Tennessee can win out and especially beat Jacksonville in that final week, Tennessee's in winning the AFC South. Jacksonville would likely be a wild card. One thing I know, Jacksonville, Tennessee, they're both going to the playoffs. It's just whether or not Tennessee is going to get that home game or Jacksonville. And then finally, Buffalo at 7-6. We can really put an asterisk next to Buffalo right now. Baltimore and Buffalo are both ahead of the Chargers based on conference record. The Ravens have a 5-4 conference record. Bills have a 5-4 conference record. Chargers 4-5. Buffalo is ahead of Baltimore based on strength of victory. But here's what you really need to know. The Ravens control their playoff destiny. If they win out, they're getting into the playoffs. And I projected the Ravens to lose last night, so it's still kind of falling in line with how I see things in the AFC. I do have the Ravens winning out from here, getting that number 5 seed in the AFC. I have them beating Cleveland in Cleveland. Then they are home to Indianapolis. They could have a new coach by that point on December 23rd. We'll see. Then they are home to Cincinnati on December 31st. Did you see the Bengals yesterday against the Chicago Bears? Speaking of the Bengals, we'll talk about them later in the hot seat rankings. So I do have the Ravens in there at 10-6. But let's go top down here. New England, I have them winning out, which means, yes, they beat Pittsburgh next week. They beat Miami tonight. They beat Buffalo on Christmas Eve. And then they beat the Jets on December 31st. Now, for Pittsburgh, I have them just losing to New England and then taking care of business against the Houston Texans. Looks like it's going to be T.J. Yates, to be honest with you guys, playing on this. It could be T.J. Yates playing on Christmas because that looked like a really rough injury by Tom Savage. Who knows how long he could be out. And then it's Cleveland on December 31st for Pittsburgh. I have them winning that game as well. Jacksonville. Like I said, had them winning yesterday against the Seahawks. That came to fruition. I have them losing one more game and getting to 11-5 and essentially winning the AFC South. So I actually have them losing to San Francisco. I think they kind of let up against Jimmy Garoppolo. They lose to San Francisco, but they beat Houston this week, and they beat Tennessee. That's the big one on New Year's Eve to win the AFC South. Okay? Then the Chargers, simple, they win out. They win out, they get to 10-6. I think they get that AFC West title. They will host a playoff game. And I talked about Baltimore at 10-6. Tennessee, guys, there's problems. It sounds like Marcus Mariota is hurt right now. He's playing hurt yesterday. Malarkey said it post-game. They're 8-5. I only have them winning one more game, and that's generous, to be honest with you. So they're 8-5 right now, as I said. I think they'll take care of business against San Francisco, maybe, and they lose to the Rams on Christmas Eve, and then they lose to Jacksonville. That gets them to 9-7, but that's still enough because they'll win over the tiebreaker over the Chiefs. So the Chiefs are on the outside. The Bills are on the outside. Yes, they won against the Colts, but they have Miami, then New England, and then Miami again. I only have them winning one more game. They'll probably win the home game to Miami. I think they lose to New England in Gillette, and then they lose to Miami on the road, because that's what the Bills do. They lose on the road in Miami at the end of the year, and they collapse, even when they're in the playoff picture. I have the Bengals there just for fun. I did not actually have them losing that game yesterday, so 7-5 is now, or 7-9 is really generous now. They're at 5-8 at this point. Okay, so those are my projections in the AFC. The big question now, in terms of the grand scheme of the NFL, who is the best team? Give us a heart for the Patriots, a wow face for the Eagles, a laughing face for the Minnesota Vikings, a like for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I'm sticking with the Patriots. I think they are the best team in the NFL right now, especially considering the Carson Wentz injury. You have to dock down the Philadelphia Eagles a little bit here in terms of the rankings. But all year long, essentially, I have had the New England Patriots as that #1 team in the NFL. Belichick, Brady, and don't count out how important Scarnecchia has been to that offensive line, right? There's not a lot of talent on that front five for New England, and they're still blocking pretty darn well. And Josh McDaniels and Matt Patricia, this coaching staff is premier. There's a reason why McDaniels and Patricia are being circled around as perhaps that next New York Giants head coach, and just any next head coach for a team that fires their current one, to be honest with you. So throw in those votes, throw in those respective reactions. We'll be tracking them here on the Cam Rogers Show, and we thank you for participating. And if you want to go that extra mile, a little extra credit, throw in a comment as to why you think that team is the best in the NFL. I have a feeling we're going to get a lot of laughing faces here, because we usually do have a good amount of Vikings fans in the comments section and voting as well. Okay, folks, here on the Cam Rogers Show, we are proud to be sponsored by Man Crates. Ladies and gentlemen, these are gifts guys love. Talking about wooden crates full of gifts meant for dudes. Talking about protein powder, barware, golf gear, etc. A Bass Whisperer crate. Fantastic products. You got to check them out. mancrates.com. Get that holiday shopping done right now. I'm telling you, you won't regret it at all, ladies. Get that special guy in your life a Man Crate. Cam Rogers Show here today, sponsored by Man Crates. We thank them for coming along here. As we are at about the bottom of the hour, 10:30 on the East, let's get to the next segment here, talking about head coaching hot seats. I updated the list for all of you guys out there. We'll start with number 5. Vance Joseph was number 5 last week. I'm keeping him there despite Denver's win yesterday against the New York Jets. Now, before that victory yesterday, the Broncos had lost 8 in a row. First team in 50 years for the Denver Broncos to do that. The win yesterday against the Jets was inspiring from the defensive side, but it is clear that they are offensively inept right now. Offensive line can't run block. C.J. Anderson can't get it going. Trevor Siemian is obviously not the answer. It seems like sometimes Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders, etc., can't get a lot of separation, which is weird to see. So Vance Joseph is my number 5 guy. And here's what Ian Rappaport said yesterday about Vance Joseph, because I think it's very important for all you guys out here to hear this. It's good context. So, quote, "No firm word on his status yet. John Elway and the Broncos want very badly to make this work. They know the quarterback situation is terrible. They know what they handed Vance Joseph offensively. They are very well aware of that. He has a very strong relationship with Elway and with team president Joe Ellis." So that's what Ian Rappaport said yesterday on NFL Network. So leadership here in Denver likes Vance Joseph. I like Vance Joseph, but let's face it, Denver has had a culture of winning the last seemingly 6 years, right? With the Manning years and the great defenses and winning that Super Bowl against the Carolina Panthers, you may recall. John Elway probably has the least amount of patience than any general manager in the NFL. I think he's a guy that can be quick with the axe and probably could be whispering to Joe Ellis, like, all right, let's keep an eye on Vance Joseph. But hey, I think that victory yesterday against the Jets was good, at least for Vance Joseph in the short term. We'll see if he can keep it going. Denver's defense still pretty good. They are a talented team, on that side of the ball, but will they fold the rest of the year? Obviously didn't show any signs of that yesterday against the Jets. So Vance Joseph checking in as number 5. Number 4 in our updated hot seat rankings, Chuck Pagano. This guy is gone, guys. He's gone. All right, so new GM Chris Ballard wanted to give Chuck Pagano a shot this year. That was reported yesterday on NFL Network by Ian Rappaport again. And obviously it's not working. So Chris Ballard is probably saying to himself, okay, it's probably time to move along here. It has been a bad situation in terms of talent for the Indianapolis Colts this season. I think they are very devoid of talent. They have a couple of good pieces. You have Jabal Sheard, who's actually having a quiet, good year. You have Hankins on the inside as well. Jonathan Hankins, the 21st ranked right end defensive lineman there, according to Pro Football Focus. But you look at the secondary, it's been a big-time disappointment. Darius Butler has been awful. Kenny Moore has been bad as well. Really, the only good secondary player has been Farley at the strong safety position. Malik Hooker going out for the year. Very notable as well. So it's all stacked against Chuck Pagano. I like Chuck Pagano, just like I like Vance Joseph. But this is probably just a stale situation at this point for Indianapolis and for Chris Ballard, who, by the way, needs to show the Colts organization that he can be a general manager, right? He can bring in a good head coach that can get the Colts back to winning ways. Colts have been 500 or worse the last 3 years, guys. Andrew Luck's injuries obviously have not helped matters. And like I said, this roster is devoid of talent. Now let's look at the defense under Chuck Pagano. 2017, points allowed per game, 32nd in terms of their rankings. 2016, 22nd. 2015, 25th. 2014, 19th. 2013, 9th. They went to the playoffs that year. 2012, 21st. Also went to the playoffs that year. Took on the Baltimore Ravens in the wild card. And yards allowed per game, no better than 20th. Or excuse me, 11th. They had a good year in 2014. They were 11th. But after that, no better than 20th in yards per game allowed under Chuck Pagano. So it's not like Pagano didn't have a lot of time. Now, again, this is a collective failure by the Indianapolis Colts organization. They drafted poorly in the last few years, but obviously they found something in Hooker, and tough to see his injury go down and all that. But Chuck Pagano, number 4 in our updated hot seat rankings. And as I go through these rankings, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I want you to tell me who's getting fired next in the NFL. We already have one firing, Ben McAdoo. That was no surprise at all. So comment below. We will show your thoughts throughout the broadcast here on the Cam Rogers Show. So, to recap, Vance Joseph, number 5, Chuck Pagano, number 4. Nothing's changed from last week. There will be some changes at the top, however. Stay tuned for that. We'll start or move along here to number 3. Dirk Cutter, head coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Guys, 8 total turnovers yesterday between the Buccaneers and the Lions. Jim Caldwell, by the way, is an honorable mention on this list. I'll talk about him at the end. But Dirk Cutter, with a roster full of talent in the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, could not convert the season into a successful one. Could not. And we've said it many times on these programs, especially on mine. A lot of prognosticators had the Buccaneers winning the NFC South or getting in as a sneaky good wild card team and making some noise in the playoffs. They are nowhere close to that now. Tampa Bay, not going to the playoffs. The Buccaneers have lost their last 3 games. Lions, Packers, Falcons. You have to go back to early or mid-November, shall we say, against the Miami Dolphins to find their last victory. So Tampa Bay has been the ultimate disappointment. Yes, Jameis Winston has been hurt this portion of the year. And that meant Ryan Fitzpatrick, the gunslinger himself. I understand that. But Tampa Bay, you look at their defense, it's been so disappointing in the back end. And I really did not expect that. Hargraves has been really bad. Brent Grimes is actually having a down year. He's only rated as the 61st best corner, according to Pro Football Focus. That's just an average year for Brent Grimes. The year before, he had an elite ranking, an elite rating of 90.2. So a big drop-off for Grimes in Tampa Bay's defensive scheme. And you have pieces on the interior and for Tampa Bay, and Levante David, who's the third-ranked linebacker, according to Pro Football Focus. Robert Ayers, having a great year in the interior. And Gerald McCoy has been just so darn consistent year in and year out. Poor guy can't get any victories for collectively for his team. And it's just a big-time disappointment. And the offensive side, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. When you have the weapons that they have, right? The big argument for Tampa Bay this season to make some noise was because they had big pieces in Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson, and you had Humphreys coming out of the slot who could be that chain mover. And then Jameis Winston, a year older, if you will. O.J. Howard, Cameron Brate. These are big physical playmakers, and it's just not happening. Didn't happen yesterday against the Lions. I thought Tampa Bay would be able to win that game against a Lions team that had, let's face it, an injured quarterback right then and there. Okay, so obviously a dire situation for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Dirk Cutter needs to go. I don't think he's the guy for them this season. All right, he could be a Black Monday candidate, if you will. All right, let's move on to number 2. John Fox, head coach of the Chicago Bears. He was previously number 1. I gave him a little credit because the Bears waltzed into the jungle yesterday and beat up on the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll talk about them in a matter of moments. But for John Fox, that victory yesterday isn't going to save his job. I think everybody around the Fox camp knows his fate. It was reported yesterday that essentially everybody knows what's going to happen, right, in the circle around John Fox. So John Fox really knows what's going down here. 13-32 record in Chicago, .289 win percentage, one of the worst in franchise history. And I think it's time for a fresh start for Mitchell Trubisky. They think they have something in Trubisky. And if they do, and they want him to develop as a good quarterback, bring in an energetic head coach, i.e. a Josh McDaniels. I think he would be a great addition for the Chicago Bears. And McDaniels and Trubisky can kind of grow together. And Chicago needs to draft well, too. Wide receiving class, not that great this season. Chicago probably going to have to sit back and wait for the wide receivers to kind of come to them. They can't reach for anybody this year. But for John Fox, good victory yesterday against the Cincinnati Bengals, but I think it says more about the Bengals than it does about the Bears. But the Bears have a defense to build upon. They're creating turnovers. They attack the ball. It's been impressive. But for John Fox, in the grand scheme of things, from a macro perspective, in terms of his tenure here, not very good. So John Fox there at number 2. And then finally, here he is. Marvin Lewis, head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Number 1, you play the Pittsburgh Steelers. You look pretty darn good during most of that game, and then you bungle it at the end. Number 2, you can't control your players. And number 3, you've been around for way too long to have 0 playoff success. Marvin Lewis, it is time for you to go. So I put Marvin at number 1 in our updated hot seat rankings because honestly, guys, contract expires after this year. He's going to be a guy at 8 a.m. come Black Monday that we hear gets fired. He's going to be your first guy. That's why I have him at number 1, as we have the summary graphic for all you guys, if you're just tuning in. Vance Joseph at 5, Chuck Pagano at 4, Dirk Cutter at 3, John Fox at 2, Marvin Lewis at number 1. This roster is in disarray, guys. They can't control themselves. Marvin Lewis cannot control his players. There are numerous examples of this. Numerous. Especially in the games against the Pittsburgh Steelers. So for Marvin Lewis, I'm sure he's a great guy. I'm sure he is trying hard for Cincinnati and, bring them a Super Bowl and all that jazz. But it's not going to happen. He needs to go. And like I said, he could be the first name we hear on Black Monday after Week 17 when all the firings happen, Marvin Lewis topping it all off in our updated hot seat rankings. Now, Cincinnati going forward, honestly, guys, I think the U-Hauls are already packed. You saw them yesterday against Chicago. Going forward, I don't think they're going to have very inspiring games, right? Vontaze Burfict has been banged up. Drake Kirkpatrick has been banged up. Pac-Man Jones went on IR. He's done for the year. Geno Atkins went into that game against Chicago on the injury report. Played in it, but still wasn't the same Geno Atkins, right? So injuries are mounting. Bengals know they're not going to the playoffs. Marvin Lewis knows he's out. So there you go, the latest hot seat rankings here on the Cam Rogers Show. All right, as promised, let's transition into the draft. We've got your top 10 picks here on the Cam Rogers Show coming at you. I am Cam Rogers. Follow me on Twitter at Mr. Rogers99. And thank you for tuning into this program here. 10:45 on the East Coast. Hope you're enjoying your Monday morning. By the way, get the podcast version of the Cam Rogers Show. Just search the Cam Rogers Show on iTunes. Download, subscribe. We'd appreciate it. Leave a rating if you so choose. And let's get into the rankings. Now, before I say name number one, this is the list based upon going into Week 14. Because Week 14 didn't essentially finish yet, because we still have Patriots and Dolphins, I did not want to update it to the fullest extent. So we're going based off what we have going into Week 14. But one thing did not change for sure. The Cleveland Browns picking at number 1 overall. Here they are. And by the way, major credit to Mr. Tom Downey here, who helped a lot in these rankings, shall we say, and obviously one of the best in the business, so using a lot of his analysis to help in this process. Josh Rosen, going number 1 overall to the Cleveland Browns, quarterback out of UCLA. I think he's the best thrower that we have this draft. He may not be the flashiest quarterback that we have in this draft. That might go to Lamar Jackson. That might go to a Baker Mayfield, the Heisman Trophy winner. But I think in terms of a piece to build around, I think the Cleveland Browns should go out and get a Josh Rosen. And Rosen would be very smart to leave UCLA with a new head coach there and Chip Kelly instilling a new offense, etc. I think Rosen should absolutely go into this draft. Number 1 overall to the Cleveland Browns. And the Browns will be picking pretty high later as well because they have that pick from the Houston Texans. So just hear me out here, guys. What if the Browns get Rosen at number 1 overall, come back with that Houston pick, get a Saquon Barkley? Ooh, I'm telling you, Saquon, Rosen, a nice 1-2 punch there in Cleveland would bring a lot of energy there to the state of Ohio because God knows the Cincinnati Bengals will be able to do it. All right, so Rosen, number 1 overall to the Browns. That means Darnold goes number 2, quarterback out of USC, Pac-12 champion this year. Going number 2 to the New York Football Giants. Now, it was actually reported going into this season that the Giants were kind of looking ahead, like to post-Eli Manning years, and trying to understand that, look, okay, it's time to finally go ahead and get that next guy for us. And so Darnold needs some work on the release, got the turnover issue. He went after it with Josh Rosen earlier this year, you may recall, USC versus UCLA. He's going to be a very valuable piece of tape for scouts out there. I don't like him a lot. I'm not crazy about Sam Darnold this year. I really am not. Because I think he has the build, but he needs to work on the mechanics a little more for me. And the turnovers, I think it kind of could be a Jameis Winston type of situation here, where, Jameis had that turnover problem at Florida State, right? And then coming out of Florida State, it's clear he still has a bit of a turnover problem with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So it could kind of be a comparable situation here with Sam Darnold. So the reaction poll for the folks at home, and the big question is, who should go number 1 overall in the NFL draft? And we have 2 options for you because the debate seems to be Darnold or Rosen. So here you go. Give us a heart for Josh Rosen, a wow face for Sam Darnold. Now, if you're on board with me, you're going with Josh Rosen, you're throwing out your heart. If you're on board with, somebody else out there who thinks Sam Darnold should go number 1 overall, you're throwing out your wow face. So throw in those votes, ladies and gentlemen. We are live right now, so we will be tracking them. And as my projections go, Rosen goes number 1, Darnold goes number 2. Okay, let's move along here. Number 3, the San Francisco 49ers. I know they won yesterday, but again, these are based on rankings going into Week 14, so just hang with me here. So the San Francisco 49ers go ahead and getting Mr. Saquon Barkley, running back out of Penn State. Now, I think that Barkley may not go this high. It's really hard to project for me, but I'm going to put him here at number 3. The 49ers currently have Carlos Hyde. They have Joe Williams, who got hurt earlier this year, and they have Matt Breida in the running back core. Will they go ahead and get a Saquon? They already have their quarterback. We can throw out the quarterback discussion, right? Jimmy Garoppolo is the guy. He's the answer. He's the franchise QB. And it's too early for the 49ers to get a wide receiver. So do you go ahead and maybe look to the secondary, maybe in the front 7 that has been pretty bad in years past? Well, as we stand right now, we've got a playmaker in Saquon going to the San Francisco 49ers at number 3. Okay, number 4, Denver Broncos. Yes, they won yesterday as well. They need offensive line help big time. They are getting pushed around at the line of scrimmage. And it's been a theme all year long. So Quentin Nelson could help solidify that interior for Denver. Really a fantastic guard coming out of Notre Dame. I've watched his tape. I love good offensive linemen. I think it's sad that they don't get the credit that they should. Quentin Nelson, I'm giving him a ton of credit because he's a road grader. A big reason why Notre Dame was ranked so highly at some points this season. And for Denver, you look at the interior, Max Garcia, he has a 39.9 grade, according to Pro Football Focus. Connor McGovern, 37.1. Those are both poor grades, and those are the left guards and right guards, respectively. So Quentin Nelson, he's like week 1 starter kind of material. Really great guard. So he's going to the Denver Broncos at 4. Number 5, the Indianapolis Colts. They just need playmakers on defense. Bradley Chubb here out of NC State, the edge rusher. He is a playmaker. He is a difference maker. He is somebody that you can put on the front 7 for Indianapolis, and he'll be something to be reckoned with. And like I said, Indianapolis's front line, not all that bad. Jabal Sheard having a good year, as I said. Hankins and Hunt doing pretty well in the interior. You bring in a Bradley Chubb, it makes things even better, and it actually helps out that secondary a lot. Good pass rushes always make a secondary look better. So, Chubb to number 5. Okay, number 6 here. The Bears. They need offensive line help, especially at the tackle position. So, Connor Williams out of Texas has been injured this year, at times this year, but I think he has left tackle type of material. Big fella, can eat up the speed rushers. Somebody that can certainly help the Chicago Bears and help one Mitchell Trubisky next season. So Connor Williams is going to be one of the higher drafted offensive linemen this year in a class that, isn't rich in offensive linemen, kind of like with wide receivers. Okay? So Bears going with Williams at number 6. Number 7, here are the Browns picking because they have that pick over the Houston Texans. So number 7, the Cleveland Browns getting Minkah Fitzpatrick, Alabama defensive back. Started out as a corner for the Crimson Tide, moved over to safety, so he's got some versatility there, which is something that NFL front offices and GMs, etc., value so much, especially in a passing league like the NFL right now. Fitzpatrick, a true playmaker on the defensive side. Obviously, you couple him with Jason McCourty and Bodie Calhoun, who's having a great year at the slot corner position. McCourty having quietly an elite year on the outside at the corner position. You throw in Fitzpatrick. You got Peppers there in the back end. Look, Cleveland's starting to stack up some good names here in that defense. Minkah Fitzpatrick there at number 7. Okay, number 8, Tampa Bay. Getting Arden Key, LSU edge rusher. Not as good this year as he was last year. A lot of people saying maybe he should have just went out for the draft last year. 12.5 tackles for loss in the previous campaign, 11 sacks this year, 5.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks in 2017. Tampa Bay, they got McCoy, they got Levante David, but do they have the speed? No. They don't have a good pass rush at this point. You saw yesterday, Matt Stafford had a lot of time to throw. Arden Key can kind of change that going into the 2018 season. So Tampa Bay picking there at number 8. Number 9, Cincinnati Bengals. They should have addressed the tackle position last year. They didn't. Andy Dalton has been running for his life all year. So how about Orlando Brown, Oklahoma offensive tackle? He is humongous, 6'8", 345. If he can't hang around as a left tackle in 2018 on an NFL team, he's going to be a great right tackle. I mean, he is going to pancake people left and right at the right tackle position. I will be interested to see how he does in the combine, how he does in all these tests, to see if he does have the footwork, the speed to get that first step as a left tackle and to do a good job with speed, edge rushers, etc. But obviously, Cincinnati, they need to address their offensive line. It's been bad. Okay? So Bengals at number 9. Number 10, Arizona Cardinals. Here it is. Josh Allen, Wyoming quarterback. I know. Yeah, he might actually fall in an updated rankings coming pretty darn soon. Not a great year for him, but he's got the tools. And that's what NFL scouts like. They like players with tools, kind of like a Rosen, kind of like a Darnold. Even though Darnold can kind of refine his mechanics, you see the potential there. A lot of scouts see the potential with Josh Allen. A lot of scouts also probably see the lack of productivity, I should say, with Blaine Gabbert. You saw it yesterday. He was awful for the Arizona Cardinals. Cardinals actually won that game somehow because Marcus Mariota was also awful. But the Cardinals, it's time to maybe look ahead to post-Carson Palmer years. So Josh Allen there at number 10. Let's recap. Here we go. 1 through 5, Josh Rosen to the Browns. Then you got Darnold, Saquon, Quentin Nelson, and Bradley Chubb, respectively. Connor Williams, Minkah Fitzpatrick, Arden Key, Orlando Brown, Josh Allen. And don't you worry, we will continue to update our mock drafts. It's a big fabric of the offseason programming right here on Chat Sports. So keep it right here on the Cam Rogers Show and many of our other shows to see the updated mock drafts. Okay, one final word here to wrap up the program. Mentioned it at the top. Tom Savage went through a brutal injury for the Houston Texans yesterday against the San Francisco 49ers. We have the video for you. We will show it. He got hit hard. And you saw him lying down in the end zone, and his hands were twitching, and it looked like it was your classic case of a bad hit, your classic case of a concussion. He went into the concussion protocol. And the, I guess, independent trauma evaluator there deemed Savage fit to go ahead and return in that game. And he threw like 2 incompletions, then went back out, and then was ruled out for the rest of the game. Bill O'Brien got a lot of flack for this in the post-game press conference. He said he just coaches, all that stuff. Bill O'Brien, I don't blame him at all. I blame the independent concussion protocol person that looked into Tom Savage's injury and saw that, no, he was good to go. Let's throw him back into the fire. Obviously was not good to go. TJ Yates ended up finishing that game, and I have major problems with how that all transpired. You can't have that, especially the way in which you saw the symptoms that Savage actually endured. There you see him there. I mean, that is just something you don't want to see. And so the concussion protocol failed Savage. The NFL failed yesterday, and what they are trying to create is a big emphasis in this issue. Okay, we talked about it in the Cam Rogers Show on Friday. CTE is a real problem. Got to stop seeing stuff like that. Tom Savage should have been thrown out of the game. Or not thrown out, just taken out, I guess you could say. All right, this has been the Cam Rogers Show here on Chat Sports Facebook Live. I'll see you back here, 10 o'clock Eastern on Wednesday. Take care, everybody.